Hi, Vanida. How are you?
Hi, Suja. Doing well, thank you.
You are an adoptive mom. And what led you to adopt? Was that something that was always in your mind?
Actually, my journey started when I was in fourth grade in India. Our school used to take us to Mother Teresa's orphanage, Shishu
Okay.
Bhavan in Bangalore, and I honestly fell in love with the kids there right when I was little. One of the first things I did when I met my husband was to ask him and tell him, I want to adopt. Are you willing to do it? We had an hour to talk and meet, as you know, most Indian weddings are that way. But during that 1 hour, that was one of my first questions. So
My goodness. Did your parents say something like, okay, don't scare this boy off and do not tell him that you want to adopt? Or did they even know you were going to bring this up?
I don't think they knew about it. But when I told my mom after that, she was like, you crazy. You shouldn't be talking about those things.
I can imagine. I mean, I'm thinking of the stereotypical thing, but even myself, I have gone out and done the whole here's the tea and, give the tea to the boy and all that. And you have to be pristine, and everything that you do is being watched. So I can't even imagine those words coming out of your mouth and what the reaction of your to be spouse was.
Actually, interestingly, he had, kind of studied the fact that in the Bible, God adopts us into his family. And
Right.
so he knew the theology behind that. And so he kind of immediately put the two together. And so he was like, yeah, we can do it.
So you went straight into marriage with the intent of, I'm going to adopt.
Yes.
That really takes a special heart because most of the time you hear, it could be, oh, well, they're having difficulty having children or can't have any children, or maybe they already have their own children and then they're, looking
Mhm.
to, they have more love to give and so they want then to adopt. So this is something very unique.
Many years later, we came face to face with the story of a little boy whose mother had just taken her life in India. And normally, we would just hear about it, especially being in the US. It'll be like, okay, we'll send some money. Maybe we'll see if,
Right,
there's any help needed. But
right.
that particular day, in that moment, it was like, God, just take the child. And I don't know, how familiar you are having grown up here, but in the Indian culture, karma is a big factor. He had witnessed his mother's death, and so people automatically assumed he had bad karma following him,
Right.
and so nobody wanted him in their home.
Well, I mean, just adoption as a whole, I feel that it is still taboo amongst our community. Like in the American society, it's almost like, oh, it's the cool thing to do. You
Yeah.
see Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, they're adopting like 20 kids, and that's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
And then for our culture, it's really looked on as, oh, well, I don't know if you should do that.
Oh, yeah. So we got a lot of negativity about it. And we were told we were stupid.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want to take a child like this. Okay, if you absolutely want to do it, just get a baby and even don't tell
right.
anybody.
When we do certain things in our life, we think, okay, I'm going to do this for this person and change or influence this person's life. And then what happens is you get it back and you're changed and you're influenced. Do you feel that, is that what happened to you in the sense that you went out to adopt and change someone's life and maybe in turn you've become a different person now?
Oh, absolutely. But I want to tell you, I think it's been one of the most beautiful journeys we've been on. It's 20 years now, almost, and yet it's been one of the hardest. It was a very isolated journey. Again, we had nobody. And our kids were pretty ostracized, in the Indian community. We are a community of success. We're a community that boasts, Ivy Leagues and perfect SAT scores and spelling bees. And my kids, particularly Sandeep, had come in. He didn't even know English when he came in.
Okay.
He had lost everything. He came in with so much of trauma. His brain wasn't very functional in that time.
Right, right.
And we were, he was just looked as a reject. My side of the family, a lot of them are here. So there was acceptance.
Okay.
And, but a lot of the family in India, there wasn't. And again, I think people just thought we were foolish. And so when things got hard, it was more like, hey, you jumped into it, it's your problem. And I
Wow.
think all these are prejudices that are inbuilt in our Indian culture.
Right.
And as the years went on, there was almost an assumption that these kids could not succeed. There is that subtle, separation and prejudice that exists. However difficult it is, I think that's 30% of the journey. I
Right.
think 70% of a parent's stress is the way the community treats us.
Absolutely. If you don't have that support group, that encouragement, and whether it be through prayer or just having someone to go to in a time of need, I mean, that's crucial. If you don't have that, I mean, what do you have?
Exactly. We have this box in our Christian culture. Okay, you have to be, from this kind of a family. You have to have this kind of background. You
Right.
have to have these kind of values.
You have to
You
look
have this
this way, you have to act
to
this
look this
way.
way. Your
Right.
morality has to be this way. And I think if you don't fit into that box, you're thrown out. And
Yeah.
I think that is so counter to the way Jesus was because he went to the least. He went to the tax collectors, the prostitutes, and he drew them in. And I think we have completely lost that. I was struggling. I wanted my kids to be successful. And I was wrestling in my heart because we didn't have that face in society. And
Yeah.
it was like, come what may, I have to get them to that point. And I think God said, no, you know what? Your kids are of value, whether they reach that point or not. And I had to really let go and say, forget society, forget the community. God has called us to this. These children are important. And it doesn't matter where they come from
Right.
or who they become. They are valuable simply because God created them and they're human beings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we love them exactly the way we love our biological child. So all three of them are our kids. They'll get disciplined the same way. They get loved the same way. So,
So pros and cons, that's wonderful. So would you say, I mean, from what you've been telling, would you say that it is your faith and your spiritual connection that has kept you going in the midst of all this trials?
yeah, so you were asking me a little earlier if this has changed me. I think for my husband and me, the biggest thing we have learned out of this, you don't always have happy endings
Right.
like we would like, but we have a God who holds us through this. And I think our trust in Him and knowing Him in a way that we would probably have never known Him
Right.
before we started this journey is amazing. Both of us are in the IT fields. My husband had actually had a PhD in physics.
Oh
I
wow.
had two masters in computer engineering and management, and we were all set. We were working. We had all these plans. A typical, family out there, IT family, working and living life. And then God just took us on a different path. I have learned so much from them on love, forgiveness, and caring for people. So it has opened out an opportunities for me to reach out into the adoptive community, to reach other adoptive moms and families. 17 million children about who are orphaned in India. I would like to encourage other families to please, those children are worth it. Yes, we can have everything in this life, but at the end of the day, imagine if you can make a difference in a child's
A
life.
chance life. Absolutely. That's so true what you're saying. So, there are some that are going to go and adopt, and that's what, has been placed in their heart. And exactly that. If you're not going to do that, then you should be, advocating for it, encouraging
Yes.
it, bringing awareness to it. And then if there's a family next door or in your church or in your neighborhood, whatever, in your own family.
In Redmond, Washington, we have a huge adoptive and foster parent conference once a year. Anybody in your audience who needs that refreshment, hey, just look it up. It's called the
Great.
Refresh Conference.
Refresh conference.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's in Redmond, Washington.
Wonderful. Do you know a lot of adoptive parents?
So I'm in a lot of groups
Okay.
of adoptive parents, some from here locally in the US
Okay.
and some in India. Most of the Caucasian families who adopted, not most, actually all of them, have special needs children from India.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I recently talked to a veteran social worker from India, and she was telling me, she said, we Indians need to be ashamed because we will not step into the life of a special needs child generally.
Wow.
And those children are just left in orphanages.
Right.
And it's an amazing thing that so many Caucasian parents are willing to step in and love and care for a child.
Again, do we go back to that cultural aspect that we were talking about of an
Yes.
expectation of what a family should be, what a child should be, what a parent should be?
And I also think, in India, when we have disabilities, children are not valued. She met a guy out here. He had polio. He was telling us how his parents kept his two siblings at home and sent him away to a boarding school so they didn't
Yeah.
want to be seen with him. So, I mean, that is a terrible thing for a child to grow up with.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
it's not that the parents are bad. It's just that society puts so much of pressure on them.
Yeah. When you said that story, it just brought this to my mind. Is that I have cousins in India. My dad's sister, and two of the boys, they're identical twins, and one of the boys has polio. And they're adults now. And when my aunt passed away, my cousin, he said this about his mom, and it was so moving and beautiful because it is not a typical thing. And he
Yes.
said that even though he had this polio, that his mom never treated him differently,
That's
loved
amazing.
him, encouraged him. And exactly what you're saying, it's not common. Usually we do hide that child or say, oh, you're not going to amount to this, so there's no expectation. But it is beautiful when you do see parents doing the opposite.
Sandeep, when he came, we were told, yeah, he's not going to amount to anything. Why would you take a child like this?
Right.
No, and I'll tell you today, I would not trade him for the world. It has been one of the hardest journeys we've been through. But both my kids, I mean, we just absolutely love them to pieces. And I could not imagine a better son or daughter.
Well, they are lucky to have your love. I can say that. Hello there, Sandeep and Sneha.
Hi.
Nice to see y'all. Sandeep, I'd like to just know a little bit more about your journey. You were only how old when you were adopted?
I was 5.5 when the adoption process actually started. I lived in India, in Bangalore, but my father was also an alcoholic. So the little money that we did make, he often spent it on alcohol, and he was abusive to my mother and us kids as well. Seeing that, my mother didn't want me growing up to be like my father. I think to shock my father into reality, she threatened to take her life. And that threat actually became a reality because she ended up committing suicide. So she burnt herself in the living room of our house. We, put out the fire, rushed her to the hospital. And at that moment, my life changed because I never saw her after that. She died a few days later. My father said he had an illness and that he couldn't take care of me and my sisters anymore, and he disappeared after dropping us kids off at his brother's house. Karma was a huge factor, so because I'd witnessed my mother's death, nobody wanted to take care of me. My sisters were sent to boarding school.
So even the uncle that you were living with, was that the same case? They looked at you like that?
Yes, it was like that, but God still worked in a creative way because here in New Jersey, my adoptive parents, soon-to-be adoptive parents, heard about my story and the trauma that I had gone through. I knew nothing of this, being 10,000 miles away.
Right.
So,
Yeah, from across
really,
the oceans, they found you. They found you both.
Exactly.
That is an amazing story. I can't even imagine. It really sounds like something that most of us would go to a theater and watch and be, in shock. So the fact that you lived that and you survived that and you're sitting here now.
When they were filling out the paperwork, they had put a checkbox saying that they would probably want to adopt sometime in the later future for another child. And that's where my sister comes in, because when they came to get me from India, they stopped by.
And they visited a hospital. Out and they said, "This is your daughter."
Wow.
And I was 4 months, when they saw me, and I want to say between 9 and 10 months when I was finally brought.
We are so grateful for that, I think, because that truly mirrors the gospel of what Jesus did for us on the cross by adopting us into his family.
This was turmoil, right? I mean, to
Yes.
get to where you are now.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I not only had post-traumatic stress from what I'd seen as a child, I was very angry and confused also as to why all these things had happened to me.
To
And
you.
I had to see them. And as a result of that, the person that was closest to me, that loved me the most, my mother, faced the brunt of my anger and chaos. You know, whenever they talked about God also, I got angry because the question to me was, why would a loving God do these things to me?
Right.
How these things increasingly worse, right, over the years because of that trauma. It affected my ability to study in school.
Did you feed off a lot of what was going on with him and his struggle? Was that rubbing off on you, or were you upset with him?
A lot of mixed emotions, I think. One, he was my older brother, so I wanted to be exactly like him. I felt like he had taken away, my parents, what I supposedly should have had, the childhood that I should have had. But I was obviously, during the formative years, I was too young to process this. There's a 6-year age difference, so
Yeah.
processing this as a young kid, it was more, oh, you're leading, let me follow no matter what it is. So often it was just double trouble. So for my mom. So she took the brunt of it. I think, like, my dad worked in New York and he worked long hours. So my mom, honestly, when raising us, when we were up until I was 6 in New Jersey, she was raising us like she was a single mom.
You know, the Indian community, how were y'all received? Did y'all feel different?
I think we were we weren't received well because even coming in, when I was adopted, and there wasn't really much acceptance from the community around us. Very few people in the beginning,
Yeah.
and throughout, but not really a whole lot from our family or friends.
When things would go wrong, or when you guys were struggling, I'm sure they came to your parents and said, "I told you so. We told you not to do this." There must have been a lot of that.
It was that. It was also a lot of silent judging.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of silent judging. Honestly, what hurt more is that even if people did see us in need, they wouldn't step up. Even if they didn't say anything, they wouldn't step up. It was more like actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Because of all the trouble at home, and there was no real resources that they could go to get help or talk to others, they kind of just had to keep it within themselves.
But I wouldn't say that nobody in our family stepped up, but the ones who did were very few.
Around 5th grade, we actually went to my uncle's house in California. It was a really chaotic year for my mom just bringing me up, and we were doing homeschooling at that time, so he was really stressed out just with the trouble I was giving. My uncle saw that in California, and he decided to keep me there, just by himself, keep me there in his house for a whole year.
Wow.
And teach me. So I lived with them for a whole year. My parents actually went back to New Jersey. That was the year that they kind of moved from New Jersey to Washington.
This was a big transition year.
Big transition year for them. My dad, quit his job and looked for another job just to move our family elsewhere.
And this is the same year that our sister Rachna joined our family.
Okay.
It helped them a lot because they needed something like this, and that's what that intentional care from people. If they can just step out and just offer assistance or offer help in some way.
That somebody saw the struggle.
Yes.
And said, "Oh, we see what you're going through. We're going to step up and help."
And Sneha, I had seen a blog written by you called Eve of Sorrow, Dawn of Joy.
So for me, a lot of it is writing, a lot of it is journaling. And so that blog post is really meant just to explain my life story and to shed light on the struggles that I still face. Because adoption is not something that happens to you and the next day, oh, you know what, I'm totally fine. It's a process. It takes a while to process. It takes a while to come to terms with. And for me, writing about it was helpful. In India, there are more than 50 million girl babies missing due to female infanticide. And actually, it kind of hits a little more personally than that because the place that I was adopted from, there's a pond behind there, and one of our friends who went to go adopt her son was told that that's where they drown all of the baby girls.
No.
So when I heard that, and as I've processed through that over the years, it suddenly hit me that I was literally just feet or yards away from my life being snuffed out.
Right, right.
So the fact that I was chosen to be one of the rare few to be a voice for the voiceless was something that was just mind blowing to me. Like, why would God save my life? He must have something bigger.
Right. Well, it takes a different kind of person to do this, and to adopt and persevere like your parents have. So I think that's a strength that only God can give.
Yeah, that's so true.
Absolutely.
Vanita, is there anything that you would have changed looking back?
Not really. I don't think we can plan these journeys. I think, when God tells us to step in, we need to just obey and jump in. And I think the adventure is so amazing with him.
Yeah.
And now looking back 20 years, I don't know how we did it, but we're here. And just looking at the two of them, you can see that it's really his hand. And we stand by the grace of God. And I don't know whether you know, but he is a week away from his first wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So God has brought him a long, long way. And Sneha is right in the middle of college. So, where we are today, we would have never imagined it. But with God, anything is possible. And that's why, even to hear them say this, how many moms get to hear these words from their kids?
Absolutely.
A whole lot. But we walk through such deep waters, and we do serve together in this ministry of caring for other families. I mean, it's nothing official. It's just what we want to do with our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get together, and Sandeep's beautiful wife, Shirley, has joined us on this journey a year ago. So as a family of 6, we spend a lot of time praying and, getting involved. So even this coming weekend, we're all going to be speaking at a conference together.
Wow. You're taking everything that has happened to you, good and bad, and just turning it around as something positive and empowering other people. That's beautiful. Vanita, do you have anything that you would like to tell other parents out there that would be interested in adopting or have ever thought about it, especially in our Indian community?
Every life is precious. And I would just ask parents out there, you have a home, you have place in your heart for one more child. Just step out and do it. And the community, again, I really beg, appeal. Our Indian community needs to stop being judgmental, stop being, ostracizing or isolating families. And that could be whether the child is disabled or whether the child is struggling or whether it's an option. It doesn't matter. In fact, those are the families we need to surround and care for and love. Let's do it. That's what we're called to do as Christians. What else are we here for?
Right.
Right. We need to be bearing one another's burdens, caring for each other. And let's show the world what our Indian community is really about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you guys are just beautiful. You can just feel the love. And you're truly an encouragement to all families, adoptive or not. You are just wonderful. So I'm so thankful that y'all took the time to come and talk to me and really share all these personal things about your life. That takes a lot of courage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless.